You're listening to The Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Good morning. I'm John David Wells. It's Thursday for you TGIF fans. Sure happy it's Thursday. What do we do on this broadcast? Glad you asked. We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. In short, we de-propagandize the mainstream media. We make commentary. That is not news. Commentary is opinion, yours and mine, and so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. Time to get our show going. We do this every single morning. We give you a digest of news since yesterday's show and while we're asleep. Time now for the front page. Thanks very much for being with us today. Let's get through some of the news that was from yesterday into today. In the Israeli-Hamas war, Hezbollah is standing up and making lots of noise. A Hezbollah official is warning that the Iranian-backed Lebanese militant group is, quote, thousands of times stronger than before, unquote, and that the U.S., Israel, and other malicious Europeans should be careful. This, according to news reports. The comments were made yesterday by a senior Hezbollah official, Hashem Shaifeddin, during a rally in a suburb of Beirut where protesters also waved Hezbollah and Palestinian flags and chanted death to America and death to Israel. This, according to The Guardian. The response to the mistake you might make with our resistance will be resounding, Shaifeddin said. Because what we have is faith, and God is stronger than you, all your battleships, and all your weapons. For its part, the IDF has expanded its activities throughout not just the country of Israel and Gaza, but also the West Bank. This from Fox News. Israeli Defense Forces said today that security forces arrested 80 terror suspects in the West Bank, including 63 Hamas operatives. The arrests were made as part of a wide-scale counterterrorism activity conducted by the IDF, Shin Bet, that's the Internal Security Agency, and the Israeli Border Police. In a joint statement, the Israeli forces said 524 wanted suspects were arrested across the West Bank and Jordan Valley since the surprise attack on October 7th, and that over 330 of them are operatives of Hamas. This according to Israeli security forces. They also confiscated more than 50 weapons, according to the IDF. Additionally, Israeli security forces said they demolished the home of a terrorist, Ahmed Yassin Jidan, who carried out a shooting attack in July that killed IDF Staff Sergeant Shiloh Yosef Amir, a local Israeli news, I-24 News, reported. Hamas terrorists are likely using North Korean weapons. This from Fox News. The Hamas terrorists that carried out a barbaric assault on Israel October 7th likely used North Korean weapons. This according to analysts and various evidence, including a militant video and weapons seized by Israel. North Korea has previously denied selling arms to the terrorist group. One weapon at the center of the controversy used by Hamas is the RPG-7 rocket. It's a shoulder-fired weapon that fighters typically use against armored vehicles. A video of Hamas terrorists using the RPG-7 rocket launcher has been confirmed through analysis by two experts on North Korean arms and South Korean military intelligence. The Associated Press also conducted an analysis of weapons captured on the battlefield. These rocket launchers fire a single warhead, can quickly be reloaded, making them valuable weapons for smaller militias and guerrilla forces running skirmishes against heavy vehicles. Hamas has been critiqued by the president of the PLO, and then that critique was removed. This from Reuters. The Palestinian Authority's official news agency published comments Sunday by President Mahmoud Abbas that criticized Hamas over its actions, but later removed that reference to the militant group without providing an explanation. The comments, published by WAFA or WAFA on its website, came from a phone call between Abbas and Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. The two discussed Israel's bombardment of Gaza following the Hamas deadly rampage through Israeli cities. The original WAFA report on Abbas's call included the line, quote, "The president also stressed that Hamas's policies and actions do not represent the Palestinian people and the policies, programs, and decisions of the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO, and that the PLO represents the Palestinian people as their sole legitimate representative." Several hours later, the phrase was adjusted to read, "The president also stressed that the policies, programs, and decisions of PLO represent the Palestinian people as their sole legitimate representative and not the policies of any other organization." A little bit of cleansing there, and interesting, and we'll talk more about that later on today's edition of the Wells Report. President Biden has pledged $100 million in humanitarian aid to the Palestinians. This from Fox News. President Biden placed a condition on that humanitarian aid going into the Gaza Strip, as Israel yesterday said it would allow Egypt to deliver a limited number of supplies for civilians. The aid will be the first assistance given to Gaza since Israel imposed a punishing 10-day siege on the territory. The announcement to allow water, food, and other supplies happened after President Biden visited Israel yesterday, hoping to prevent a wider conflict in the region. During his one-day visit to Israel, Biden announced $100 million in humanitarian aid for Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, but said if Hamas confiscates it, the aid will end. Biden's visit tried to strike a balance between showing U.S. support for Israel amid its war with Hamas while expressing concern for civilian casualties. He unequivocally said the U.S. stands with Israel and its right to defend itself from Hamas terror attacks, but attempted to dampen growing alarm among Arab allies that the current war could escalate to a wider conflict. By the way, NBC News is reporting that President Joe Biden will deliver a prime-time foreign policy speech to the nation tonight, according to the White House. The Oval Office address is scheduled for 8 p.m. Eastern Time and will address the administration's response to the Hamas terror attack against Israel and Russia's war in Ukraine. It comes after President Biden flew to Tel Aviv yesterday, pledging his support for Israel in the wake of the sprawling attack carried out by Hamas this month. In remarks there after the meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, President Biden said Israel was born to be a safe place for the Jewish people in the world. While it may not feel that way today, Israel must again be a safe place for the Jewish people. He promised the U.S. would do everything in our power to make sure that it is. He also stressed the difference between Hamas and the Palestinian people, who said are suffering greatly. He said who are suffering greatly. The vast majority of Palestinians are not Hamas. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people, according to President Biden. U.S. Palestinians are reporting violence and bigotry increasing in their lives. This from USA Today. A U.S. Department of Justice hate crime investigation into the fatal stabbing of a 6-year-old Palestinian-American Muslim boy in Illinois is one of several incidents of alleged hate being directed at Palestinian Americans, allies, and people who look like them since the war began. In Dearborn, Michigan, police arrested a man last week for saying in a Facebook post that he wanted to gather people to hunt Palestinians, according to a screenshot of the post that Dearborn police shared with the Detroit News. On Sunday morning, a person approached a Sikh teen wearing a turban on a New York City bus, saying, "We don't wear that in this country, and take that mask off." That's a quote. The suspect then punched the 19-year-old in the back of the head, face, and back multiple times. He also tried to forcibly remove the man's turban before fleeing on foot. And in Oregon, the Islamic Society of Greater Portland said community members have faced threats in recent days, which have been reported to law enforcement. ABC News reports 300 Palestinian supporters have been arrested at the U.S. Capitol. Approximately 300 people were arrested by Capitol Police during a large-scale demonstration. This happened yesterday against the Israel-Hamas war. This according to Capitol Police. Most were arrested for demonstrating in the Capitol, according to a spokesperson. Hundreds of people had gathered inside and outside the Capitol complex this yesterday before the arrest, calling for an end to conflict between Hamas and Israel, Hamas, a Palestinian militant group that had launched a terror attack on Israel earlier this month. Some of the demonstrators entered the Cannon office building at different security entrance points and assembled in the rotunda, according to police. A large-scale demonstration followed a similar event at the White House earlier this week that also resulted in dozens of arrests. Protesters, like the rest of the public, can legally enter the Capitol complex and only risk issues when they cause a disturbance. This according to a Capitol Police spokesperson. More sentences have been handed out in the January 6th fracas earlier. A Mississippi man and his cousin from Alabama were sentenced to prison for their role in the January 6th riot in the U.S. Capitol. This reported by USA Today. The Justice Department made the announcement this week. Thomas Harlan Smith, 45, of Mathiston, Mississippi, was sentenced to 108 months in prison and 36 months of supervised release. The Attorney General's, the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Northern District of Mississippi, said in a news release on Tuesday. His cousin, Donnie Dwayne Wren, 44 years of age, of Athens, Alabama, was sentenced to 12 months and 1 day in prison. 24 months of supervised release will follow that. Back in May, a jury convicted Smith of 11 charges, including felony offenses of assaulting officers with a dangerous weapon, obstruction of an official proceeding, 2 counts of civil disorder. On the same day, Wren was convicted of civil disorder and assaulting, impeding, or resisting officers, both felonies, and a misdemeanor charge of entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds, according to the DOJ press release. Politics news, the speaker's chase, the speaker's hunt is still going on. Jim Jordan, the representative from Ohio, lost the second speaker vote. Fox News reports that Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan intends to hold a third round of voting for speaker today. This, according to a source familiar with Fox News. "We're going to keep going," said Jordan's spokesman, telling Fox News earlier when he said if there would be a third round. All House Democrats and 22 Republicans voted against Jordan's bid for Speaker yesterday. That's 2 more than GOP lawmakers that voted against him on Tuesday. Nevertheless, Jordan allies have insisted it was not an immediate sign of his campaign for Speaker faltering. Quote, "Don't lose faith if Jordan loses a few votes on the second ballot. I'm committed to voting as many times as we must to get Jim elected as Speaker, as long as he's putting his name forward," said Representative Jeff Duncan from South Carolina. "If that means we vote all night, then buckle up, because we will vote all night." And finally, out of pharmaceutical news, Pfizer has more than doubled the price of Paxlovid. This from CNN. The price of life-saving COVID-19 antiviral medication Paxlovid will more than double as the United States transitions from the emergency phase of the pandemic, according to drug maker Pfizer, speaking yesterday. The list price before insurance will be $1,390 for a 5-day course, according to Pfizer. That's 2.6 times higher than the $530 per course paid by the U.S. government, which provided Paxlovid free to patients during the pandemic. The Wall Street Journal reported this first. Pfizer noted that the list price does not necessarily reflect the price a patient will pay, and said it's working to secure health insurance arrangements that would come out with low out-of-pocket costs for patients. The company also said it would offer assistance with copays for people who qualify, which could bring their out-of-pocket costs to zero. And that is today's front page. Coming up, we're going to go back to the war. We're going to spend a little bit of time getting an update. One of our dear friends is going to join us, Colonel John Antel, a little bit after the bottom of the hour. He's going to spend a little bit of time talking to us about what he sees from the beginning of this through where we are now. That will be happening. Also, we'll be talking a lot more about some interesting dynamics going on with regards to the Palestine, the PLO, and Hamas. An interesting little civil war is developing. More coming up. Stay where you are. This is the Wells Report.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
This is the Wells Report. Good morning. I'm John David Wells. Thanks very much for being a part of our broadcast. It's awfully nice of you to be here. Let's see what else is going on here. It's really weird. Oh, okay. So that's the reason. I was just looking at my screen. It looks a little different today. I don't know whether it looks different to you or not, but there's something going on. They made a change, and they never tell me about it. They just make changes and never say a word. I'm talking about the folks that handle our broadcast. We have all this wonderful technology, but occasionally they just simply don't keep me in the loop as to how they update it. Getting back to our broadcast today, 2 missiles fired from Lebanon toward Israeli settlements, according to Lebanese state media. These are updates from CNN, who's done a wild job, a fantastic job in making sure we know what's going on. 12 minutes ago is when when the report showed up, 2 Kornet missiles were fired from Lebanon toward the Israeli settlement of Al-Manara. That happened this morning, and Israeli forces responded with artillery fire on the outskirts of Miz al-Jabal on the Lebanese side of the border, according to the Lebanese state agency. Several towns on the western side of the border were shelled at dawn, according to the state news agency. No injuries were reported in the Israeli airstrikes in the outskirts of the town of Nakura in southern Lebanon, according to that news agency as well. Israeli aircraft were flying over southern Lebanon and the coastal city of Saida over around midnight, this according to the state news agency. Israel also fired flare bombs across the blue line of demarcation. The agency also reported that dead bodies retrieved by the Lebanese Red Cross in Alma al-Sha'ab in the southern region of Lebanon were of fighters. It did not specify the number of casualties. CNN reported 2 days ago the Red Cross was heading to retrieve 4 dead bodies from Alma al-Ashab. The news of the missiles came amid clashes along Israel's border with Lebanon. Hezbollah, an armed group backed by Iran, dominates the southern part of the country. And while the fighting there appears to be marginal compared to fighting between Hamas and Israel, it raises wider fears of a wider conflict. A growing number of people have been found dead and dozens others injured on today or this morning following an Israeli airstrike that targeted the Al Amal neighborhood, this in the Khan Yunis area of the Gaza Strip. This is according to the media office of the Interior Ministry of Gaza, which is controlled by Hamas. Israeli Defense Forces spokesperson Major Jaron Spielman told CNN, "I have absolutely no information about that city block. If it was IDF, the IDF will check into this and let everyone know, as we always have done in the past." A European Union spokesman welcomed reports that Egypt has agreed to allow aid trucks into Gaza, but said any restrictions on the amount allowed into the enclave is not in line with international humanitarian law. European Commission spokesperson Balazs Ujvari said that the bloc welcomes the announcement by Egypt, according to which critically needed humanitarian aid will be able to start being delivered into the Gaza Strip, and reiterated that international humanitarian law obliges all parties to ensure safe and unhindered humanitarian access to the people in need. Restrictions on quantity, destination, and categories of items are not in line with this obligation. The White House has requested $40 billion for Israel and other support in supplemental budget requests. This from 48 minutes ago. U.S. President Joe Biden plans to request around $100 billion in national security supplemental packages this week, including $40 billion in aid for Israel, Taiwan, and the U.S. southern border, and around $60 billion in aid for Ukraine. This according to a senior administration official. President Biden himself had said this week he plans to ask lawmakers to approve an unprecedented support package for Israel's defense. The president will issue a major foreign policy speech tonight from the Oval Office at the White House. That will begin 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and will be covered by the Wells Report. This is Thursday. It is the 19th day of October, year of our Lord, 2023. Our telephone number, 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. You are welcome to join us. Please do so. And we will take your comments both on chat and on the telephone as we continue with the news, commentary, analysis, and debate. It is the Wells Report. Back with Colonel John Antel in just a moment.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost. How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to Low Cost Airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us. Joining us, indeed, the you and me, is Colonel John Antel. He is our military expert, and there's a reason for it, because the guy is completely brilliant. I've known him for years. He has all kinds of things to discuss with us today regarding the Israeli-Hamas war. But what we also want to do is we also want to talk about the fact that he has a brand new book called The Next War, or Next War, Reimagining How We Fight. And I guess that's a very good way to start this conversation, because we are here in the midst of the Israel... Oh, he's got a picture of it. There you go. We are here because of a circumstance of a failure of imagination that Hamas would indeed show up and fight with Israel before they were ready in a complete surprise. Talk to us a little bit about where the fight stands right at this moment, sir.
Right. Well, on the 7th of October, as everyone should be aware, Hamas, which is a terrorist group in Gaza, conducted a surprise attack against Israel. It started with the launching of thousands of rockets, and the Israelis have been used to this. So there's a tactics of mistake issue here where they consistently do the same thing in defense of the rockets. The Iron Dome takes down the rockets, people go into their bunkers and they wait for the all clear. Well, at the same time that those rockets were being fired, and almost as a diversion, if you would, Hamas then breached the wall and came over the top of the wall with gliders and exploded holes in the wall and brought in thousands of terrorists to kill Israelis in unguarded settlements. And these are kibbutzim and nakal settlements in the southern portion of Israel. And they slaughtered people there in their beds. They killed people in a music conference, in a music festival. They just went around in wanton murder and savagery. Now, the Israeli army was caught off guard. They did not protect their people. And on top of that, most of the Israelis who were in these situations were unarmed. So Hamas had easy pickings and killed them, and killed many of them. The Israelis responded. It took several days, almost a week, for the Israelis to kill and find and kill all the Hamas terrorists that were inside southern Israel. Now they have sieged Gaza, and they've cut off the water and air supply, water and food supply, but they have now let a little bit of the water back in. And as you all know, this siege is in preparation for a ground invasion. Now, President Biden showed up today, and this has delayed the ground invasion by probably 36 to 48 hours. So the ground invasion can happen almost any time now after President Biden has cleared the Israeli airspace and is safe. And what will happen next will be the Israelis, who are steely-eyed and want revenge for this. They will come in to Gaza to kill Hamas, not the Palestinian people, but Hamas, and they will do so probably in a phased operation.
Now, this has come with a certain level of risk insofar as there have been a lot of actors around the world who are willing to say that if Israel does indeed go into the Gaza Strip, they will intervene. I suppose, the most upsetting one being Iran. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if you understand the geography of the area, Israel's in the middle between basically Gaza and the northern Lebanon border, which has the army of Hezbollah. Now, Hamas is a proxy army of Iran, and Hezbollah in Lebanon on the Lebanese border is a proxy army of Iran as well. Hezbollah has been fighting Israel in short skirmishes in the last few days. They've been exchanging anti-tank guided missile fire and tank fire, mortar fire, artillery fire, and drone attacks. And the Israelis have been hammering them with artillery and also with aircraft when their small groups are trying to infiltrate the northern Lebanese, the northern border, the Lebanese border that is northern Israel, into Israeli territory. So we have a situation with Hezbollah that is ramping up. Iran wants Hezbollah to attack to assist Hamas so that Israel has to fight on two fronts. And Hezbollah has over 130 to 150,000 guided missiles and rockets. Not all are guided, but a lot of them are precision weaponry. They have a much better arsenal than Hamas ever did. And what happened the other day when you saw Hamas and another offshoot of Hamas, Islamic Jihad, shooting missiles inside the city to shoot at Israel? This is as if you were going to shoot a major rocket out of your backyard. One of those went short and hit the parking lot of the hospital, and the Israelis have proven that. And anyone who is a person that has, an open mind will see exactly what happened there.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that open mind thing. From one end of the country to the other, there are college campuses that are filled with students for whatever reason picking up this Palestinian support situation and the support for Hamas. And that has been not just upsetting, but it seems to be absolutely absurd. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think in the safety of their college campus, they can do almost anything, and they are. If you had to deal with these savages on your border and they were killing your grandmothers and your children and burning people alive and cutting their throats and beheading babies, I think you would react differently as well. I don't think these people know what's going on, and I don't think they understand.
Yeah, the thing about that is that the evidence is clear that everything you just said actually happened, and so they seem to want to disbelieve it or ignore it or try to say that it's some sort of fakery. What kind of madness is this?
Well, it's the same madness that happened prior to World War II and during World War II, when people didn't want to acknowledge the fact that Jews were being sent into concentration camps and shoved into ovens. I mean, the story is basically that these Hamas savages are no better than the Nazis. And if you want to deal with Nazis and make peace treaties with Nazis, think about that. That's not what was the situation. You know, we can do this right now. The Israelis need to clear this up. Now, the Palestinian people are in the middle of this, and all course they support Hamas pretty much. I mean, for instance, in World War II, if you were to say we're going to fight the Nazis, but we're not going to kill any German citizens because the German citizens really don't support the Nazis, that's an interesting premise. Our problem is now that in the safety of our nice, cushy dorms in college campuses, a lot of people don't understand the reality of war and don't understand the reality of the Middle East and haven't been there and don't know what's going on. I have been there. I have seen this. The first time I went into Gaza was back in 1975. And they told me, make sure I rolled up the windows because they didn't want anybody to throw a grenade into our little armored car vehicle thing. You know, so Israel occupied Gaza then, and they tried their best to make a situation where Gaza could prosper. But the Hamas and others, Hamas didn't exist then, but the PLO then and other organizations in Gaza don't want that. What they want is power, and they want money, and they want to be able to use these people, the Palestinian people, to their benefit. So the more casualties amongst the Palestinian people for Hamas, so much the better, they think, because then they can try to win the information war. There's a huge information war being fought right now. And the latest phase of it, the Israelis have showed logic and precision in how they did not do this strike and how this next phase is going to be a hammer that is going to crush Hamas. And you're going to see a lot of Hamas fighters suddenly fleeing and surrendering and dying because they're not going to be able to meet and oppose the Israeli army. The IDF, as I said, is steely-eyed and ready to go in. They are ready to take care of these monsters, and they will, and they have to.
We are speaking with Colonel John Antel, U.S. Army retired, great friend of the Wells Report, has been our military correspondent for heaven knows years. At this particular moment, he is the author of Next War, Reimagining How We Fight, and he is joining us here on the Wells Report as we come to this. Now, obviously, there are serious problems here with this entire situation. In other words, the Israeli army, the IDF, has to deal with Hamas. There is Hezbollah up north, and they do a lot of saber rattling, but they don't seem to be willing at this particular moment to actually engage because I think they realize the disaster that would await them if they did. On the other hand, there's also Iran, which, by the way, uses these two forces as proxies. And what I'm trying to find out is what are your thoughts at one point? In other words, the wider regional conflict aspect of this. What are the chances of that happening, and what are the chances of Iran being involved in that wider conflict directly with Israel?
Well, people need to think through this very carefully. You can take sides in any conflict, but right now the situation is such that we could be on the verge and the brink of a major war. If Hezbollah attacks with 150,000 rockets on Tel Aviv, more than likely the United States will be engaged. We have said we would. We'll see if we are as strong as our words. And if so, we may have missile strikes and airstrikes against Hezbollah. Iran has said if that happens, or if Hezbollah, or if Israel moves into Gaza, that they will attack also. Now that means that Iran would launch missiles from Iran, and they would fly over other countries like Iraq and Syria, and they would then strike targets in Israel. So we have a major conflagration happening because Hamas wanted it to, because Iran wanted it to. And that is why we'll see if Hezbollah has any independence left, because they may not be able to say no to their Iranian masters. And they may get crushed in the whole process, because the Israelis know clearly that if they have to destroy Hamas and Hezbollah attacks, they then have to destroy Hezbollah. And if Iran attacks, Israel will strike on.
Let's talk a little bit about the leadership situation. You said that that the United States has committed to help, say, for example, the Israeli Defense Force, if indeed they're involved in a multi-front war. Well, that leads directly to the Oval Office, which also leads to the President of the United States visiting Israel. And what I'm concerned about is, A, what do the enemies think of the president? He didn't look good. He did not move well. He did not communicate well. Do they believe that Joe Biden would have the sand necessary to be able to say to the, say, for example, the crew of the USS Gerald R. Ford to go to war? Do you believe that might happen? Or am I asking an unfair question, sir?
Well, it's not an unfair question. American leadership is being questioned around the world ever since Afghanistan, since our disgraceful retreat from Afghanistan. However, what the president did today was courageous in the sense that he was there in a war zone, and he was there standing by our ally. And the Israelis know that no matter what was said and how it was said, he was there. That action counts. So we will see what happens next. But if we are true to our word, then we will support Israel in this very dire time. If we are not true to our word, then I feel that around the world we will have major problems, even more major problems than you can imagine. For instance, Russia's watching carefully. China's watching carefully. North Korea is watching. And of course, Iran is watching. And if we decide that we're not going to support Israel after saying that we will, well, that's another thing.
Yeah, it certainly is. We are speaking with Colonel John Antel, U.S. Army retired. He is joining us here on the Wells Report. So when we start talking a little bit about war with Iran, there would be people who would say now's a good time, insofar as their chase for nuclear weaponry apparently has not reached its conclusion yet. Although, from what we understand, there is very seriously enriched uranium at their disposal. So the question is this, is this the right time to go to war with Iran when what they have are really well-made and really capable rockets, but with conventional warheads? Is this the time to get this done?
Going to war is something that is a very serious matter that should never be talked about lightly. We don't want to go to war with anyone right now. Our challenge is that because of the world situation and the way that we have set things up over the past several years, American weakness is allowing the enemies of America, enemies of democracy, enemies of the people who believe in freedom versus the people who believe in autocracy to succeed in ways that shouldn't happen. Right now, we have a problem that we've got to try to minimize this war. The best thing we could do is keep Iran out of the war and keep Hezbollah out of the war and let Israel take care of Hamas and let them fight the fight. I hope that's what happens. We will see. This is such a tinderbox, the Middle East, that it is so easy for this to turn into a major conflagration, which is bad for everyone. No war is good, and there is no good time for a war. But, for instance, when you're attacked and you have no recourse but to defend yourself and to make sure that those attacks can't happen on you again, then you have some tough choices to make. The Israelis are faced with those tough choices. We will soon be faced with those tough choices as well. How we respond will be the measure of who we are as a people and what we believe in.
He is John Antel. He is the author of Next War, Reimagining How We Fight. Sir, it is a privilege and a pleasure to have you on this Wells Report, as we always do, as you are so kind to be a part of. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you. Let's pray for peace, but if we have to go to war, we have to win it.
Indeed we do. We do have to win it. This is the Wells Report. I want to thank Colonel John Antel for being a part of our broadcast again. He's a great guy. He has not just mentored all of us on this broadcast, but has brought me around as a soldier. He has taken interest in my military education and has done a great job with that as well. I can't tell you what kinds of things this man has shared with me from a standpoint of leadership and all the things required to be an asset to an organization instead of, well, just the first syllable. This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for being a part of our broadcast. 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. Chat room is going. Make sure you check out that or call us on the telephone. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments for this Thursday morning.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
This is the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. There have been reports that Hamas terrorists have been using RPGs made in North Korea. There have also been some reports that weapons and ammunition sent to Ukraine to help Ukraine in that conflict have made their way into the black market through Ukrainian corruption and have also ended up in the war zone between Hamas and Israel. We're watching that story. We haven't necessarily decided that it is real news at this point, but we are watching the story of the Ukrainian corruption creating a mess for U.S. arms. We'll let you know. But it is probably very likely that Hamas terrorists certainly did have access to North Korean weapons. This is the world terrorism infrastructure that I keep talking about. The Hamas terrorists that carried out a barbaric assault in Israel on October 7th likely used RPGs from North Korea. By the way, an RPG is a rocket-propelled grenade, a very effective weapon, very, very good. It doesn't seem like it would be accurate, but it is. It doesn't seem like it would be overly powerful, but it is. It is a shoulder-fired weapon that fighters use against armored vehicles, especially in small militia units. These things are very effective. They fire a single warhead. They can be quickly reloaded. They are valuable for smaller militias and guerrilla forces. Not a surprise to see North Korean weapons with Hamas, said Matt Schrader, a senior researcher with the small arms industry, who wrote a guide to Pyongyang's light weapons. In addition to RPG-7s, Hamas propaganda videos and photos show its fighters with North Korea's Bullseye guided anti-tank missile. This would be a rough analog to the Stinger missile used by the United States. This, by the way, was being reported by Jensen Jones, a weapons expert who works as the director to the consultancy Armament Research Services. Jensen Jones cited imagery of the weapons wielded by Hamas terrorists. North Korea has long supported Palestinian military groups. North Korean arms have previously been documented among interdicted supplies, in other words, supplies captured by Israeli Defense Forces when engaged with Hamas. Russia uses similar weaponry, and the North Korean RPG resembles a widely distributed RPG-7. It is indeed a North Korean copy of it, but has few noticeable differences, including a distinctive red stripe across the warhead, but that really doesn't matter. The thing about it is that the weapons, based on the very same design, may be slightly different between the Russian version and the North Korean version, insofar as you may not be able to use RPG grenades from a Russian weapon on a North Korean one and vice versa, although it's probably very likely that you could. Hamas published images of their training that show fighters with a weapon with a rocket-propelled grenade with a red stripe, other design elements matching the RPG-7. Militant video examined by AP shows one fighter carrying the RPG-7 with the red stripe. Weapons seized by the Israeli military shown to journalists also include the red stripe and other design elements matching the RPG-7. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff specifically identified the F-7 as one of North Korea's weapons it believes that Hamas used in an attack. During a press briefing on Tuesday of this week, the Israeli military declined to identify the origin and manufacture of those rocket-propelled grenades, citing the ongoing war with Hamas. And so we find ourselves in a position where we are watching, according to some published reports, United States arms bound for Ukraine ending up in the hands of Hamas. We are also watching the fact that many of the world's terror countries, Iran, North Korea, China to some degree, are nourishing these proxy armies with weapons that are making things extremely difficult for Israeli forces. The thing about it is this. The harsh truth of it is that most nation states have discovered the ability to go to war with another nation without necessarily having to declare war, without necessarily having to commit their own troops. In other words, they find, say, for example, a group of people that are willing to fight an American enemy, a Chinese enemy, a Russian enemy, a North Korean enemy. And then those countries provide military hardware and training. We did that with the Mujahideen in the late 80s in Afghanistan. The United States brought it, at that time, it was a little more careful because what ended up happening was the Mujahideen were given Russian-made weapons courtesy of the CIA and Israel. And so all of these things come home to roost. In other words, weaponry pours into various sides of any conflict in this proxy army circumstance, which, by the way, circumvents international law. The international rules of law that we've been talking about for the last several days are making it possible for this kind of action to take place among sponsoring countries, the United States, Iran, in this case, North Korea. It is kind of an ugly part of reality when it comes to fighting with each other. I certainly wish we'd come up with some sort of treaty negotiation or some treaties, in fact, that would stop this practice. But then again, that's what happens when you go to war with an ideology instead of going to war as a nation. There are circumventions. There are also protections that are not present, even though civilized countries seem to infer these protections on uncivilized warfare, which is certainly what Hamas and Hezbollah and other organizations are practicing against nation states. Our telephone number, 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. You can find us on our chat room. Please do so. We'll be headed back in just a moment with hour number 2 of the Wells Report.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
Hey, thanks for joining us this morning for the Wells Report, and make sure you share us with all your friends on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, Patreon, and don't forget to check out our Substack column, which will be coming up a little bit later on this afternoon. When you do all this, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give us those thumbs up. They are really important. Check the notification box so you know when we're on the air, and whatever you do, join us every morning, Monday through Friday, 9 to 11 a.m. Central Time, for the Wells Report.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Good morning. I'm John David Wells. What do we do on this broadcast? We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We de-propagandize the mainstream media. We do make commentary. That is not news. That is opinion, both yours and mine, and so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. And the debate part is going on as we speak with our chat room. It's going around. Let's see a few questions here. Brad asks, how many, hang on a second here, how many ammo, missile, munitions went to Gaza from the U.S. departure from Afghanistan? That's a great question. We're not exactly sure how much came from Afghanistan, but there are repeated reports that Ukrainian arms sent to Ukraine have been sucked into the black market through the corruption of Ukraine and sent to Hamas. That is something that we're not ready to go to press with yet. These are unconfirmed reports, but I will float those out there for you based on your question. Been a lot of reports, a lot of U.S. weapons destined for Ukraine. Yes, that's true. There's absolutely no concrete evidence to establish a link between Hamas military arsenal and Ukraine. This according to multiple arms experts. This from European news. Okay, that might be the case for European news, but that's not what I'm getting. But thanks very much for your commentary, Chris. I appreciate it. RPG, can you deer hunt with one? No. No, if you deer hunt with an RPG, you won't have anything left. It won't have the deer, won't have the RPG, won't have anything left. It's a little strange. Let's see. So I'm a little confused. The West Bank is Palestinian, but they're not attacking Israel. But everyone else wants to Lebanon, Syria. Why doesn't the West Bank take on the Gaza refugees? Okay, interesting that you should bring that up. Let's talk a little bit about that. First of all, let me give you kind of a little primer on what's exactly going on. Israel has two Palestinian enclaves it deals with. One is the West Bank. That's where the Palestine Liberation Organization is, PLO. That's where they run their business. The other part, the other Palestinian enclave, is the Gaza Strip, which is a small strip of land on the southeastern or the southern part of Israel. Now, that's run by Hamas. Two different organizations. The PLO asserts authority on all Palestinian people in the region. However, Hamas was voted in by the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Lebanon is only the host country for a group called Hezbollah. Hezbollah is essentially a proxy army of Iran that, for whatever reason, Beirut allows to exist within its borders. Why Beirut does this? I have no idea. Maybe Beirut, the government of Beirut, is also in the pocket of Iran. But that being said, there is this proxy army in the southern part of Beirut that regularly engages in terror activity and in battles with the Israeli Defense Force. Getting back to the West Bank, this is where the actual, shall we say, legitimate leadership of the Palestinians are, and that would be the PLO, and that is Mahmoud Abbas. There's some interesting things going on around here. Let me give you some of the news here. IDF said that security forces have arrested some 63 Hamas operatives, including the Ramallah-based Hamas chief Hassan Youssef, among terror suspects, 80 of them in all, detained overnight in West Bank raids. That brings the number of suspects in custody since the Hamas attack to 524. Now, remember, I just told you that the West Bank was a Palestinian enclave run by the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the Palestine Liberation Organization, which is not Hamas. Interesting that Israel would be able to go into West Bank without really creating any kind of muss or fuss, and suddenly Hamas terrorists are being arrested. How would you figure that? Unless the Palestine Liberation Organization realized that Hamas had gone rogue and was doing its best, the PLO was doing its best to also stop Hamas. There's more to that story. IDF Special Forces began an intricate operation surrounding the Nur Shams refugee camp in Tel Karm Governorate with the objective of arresting Hamas militants and destroying their infrastructure, including uncovering specific locations where the militants had planned to set off explosive charges. They apparently were successful in that. Palestinian sources reported that 120 people were taken into custody, including 6 Hamas operatives, 62 released convicts, 3 journalists. That tally stands as the highest since October 7th. And so, interesting. Now, this is not as nearly as cut and dried as you would wish. We reported during the front page the Palestinian Authority's official news agency published comments Sunday by Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas that criticized Hamas over its actions, but later removed that reference to the militant group without providing an explanation. The original report included the line, the president also stressed, this is Mahmoud Abbas, also stressed that Hamas policies and actions do not represent the Palestinian people, the policies, programs, and decisions of the Palestine Liberation Organization. Several hours later, the phrase was adjusted to read, the president also stressed the policies and programs. They left out the entire reference to Hamas. Now, why is that? Well, there are 2 ways of looking at it. At one point, it's about Palestinian unity. At the other point, it was Mahmoud Abbas saying, you know what, we are not Hamas. We are the PLO, we are not Hamas, although the PLO has had a brilliant, read degenerate, a brilliant terrorist past in the world and around, and certainly around the Middle East. So what's happening is that there is, in my humble opinion, a bit of a civil war that is currently happening among the people running the Palestinian people. And this is remarkable. Now, what does this actually lead to? Okay, so the Hamas move was really ill-advised. It was a dumb move. Hamas, in one murderous stroke, made Palestinians the pariah race of the entire world. They absolutely blew off any kind of legitimacy for the Palestinian people requiring or asking for international aid. They absolutely destroyed any kind of moral equivalence between what is happening in Palestine and what's happening in Israel. When I say Palestine, read the West Bank. They absolutely blow all that up. In fact, there was a recording talking about the bombing or the rocket attack. It wasn't actually an attack, it was a malfunction. A rocket malfunction that landed in the parking lot of a hospital that killed several people, not the 500 originally reported. But there were Hamas operatives essentially commiserating at the stupidity of Islamic Jihad, which was responsible for that rocket launch. So there are a couple of different people here. There are a couple of different factions here. The PLO doesn't want Hamas any more than anybody else does. And they are, in my humble opinion, doing their best to work with the IDF, allowing them into the West Bank to go and capture Hamas terrorists without creating a problem for themselves with the rest of the Arab street. It is very arcane. It is hard to understand. And it is incredibly unfortunate, but it does bring up this interesting opportunity. So, the problem with the Palestinian question with regards to Israel has always been that Palestinian leadership just doesn't negotiate in good faith. They have negotiated from the very beginning of this mess, way back in 1947, in bad faith. They have said that they wanted a homeland of their own. No, the homeland they want is Israel. And they want to kill all the Jews living in Israel because they're anti-Jewish, genocidal nuts. And the Jews are not going anywhere. But there have been various negotiations, very high-profile negotiations since then. From Jimmy Carter to Bill Clinton, George W. Bush had nothing to do with it, and other organizations, not until Donald Trump showed up with the Abraham Accords, which essentially sought to deal the Palestinians completely out of the question. Just completely deal the Palestinians out of the game. Because what happened is that Saudi Arabia and Israel were talking seriously about normalizing relations, along with the United Arab Emirates and many other countries. And essentially just walking away from the Palestinians as refusing to take yes for an answer. And so, getting back to Mahmoud Abbas and this current situation, with his willingness to essentially throw Hamas under the bus, this will provide leverage for anybody negotiating with Mahmoud Abbas to actually negotiate in good faith. And then the outcome would be a Palestinian homeland. I doubt very sincerely that the Gaza Strip will be part of that. If I was Israel, I'd say, we need to do something about the Gaza Strip. Either you guys have to go in there and get rid of Hamas, or we will. And if they get rid of Hamas, then why would, say, for example, there need to be any barrier between the Palestinians and Israel if indeed Hamas wasn't there? And if indeed all of the terrorists, all the people standing with the terrorists were not there? The answer would be there would be no real reason. But the West Bank would then be Palestine. And Mahmoud Abbas would stop being a rogue terrorist chief and actually create some sort of legitimate government. But that has got to be imposed on the Palestinian people, not just by the United States. It's not American hegemony that we're talking about here. But the actual Arab world is going to have to tell the Palestinians to settle down, to stop, to leave Israel alone. Time to move forward. It's been half a century. Enough is enough. And that's what this agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia, this new agreement that essentially touched off all of this mess, is all about. Iran realizes that if indeed Israel and Saudi Arabia continue their linkage, then they lose all manner of leverage in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, for example, is only dealing with Israel for one reason and one reason only. Saudi Arabia wants access through treaty to Israel's nuclear inventory because Iran is an enemy of Saudi Arabia. Actually, Iran is an enemy of everyone. But that's why all this happened. That's why this whole thing came down, because of this agreement with the Arab states and Israel, which would not just take the Palestinians out of the equation, but would also provide an unassailable counterweight to Iran's activity in the region. Does that make sense? It all starts with what was the not just savage, silly, absurd incursion into Israel, but the bigotry that actually propelled it on the part of Hamas. That was a huge mistake. If indeed there is a Palestinian homeland, and if indeed Palestinian terrorism becomes an article of the past, it's going to be because Hamas made this incredible error, which might work out best for everyone. We can at least dream. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. What do you think about that? Share your ideas with me. I would appreciate it. This is the Wells Report. Back in a moment.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
This is the Wells Report. I'm John David Wells. Thanks for being a part of our broadcast. Telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. The President of the United States has pledged $100 million in aid, humanitarian aid, for the Palestinians. Let me give you a look at just exactly how that came down. Here's the President of the United States.
Met with for some time this morning to agree to the delivery of life-saving humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza, based on the understanding that there will be inspections and that the aid should go to civilians.
Stand by just a moment. I hate to do this. This is more of this annoying little problem that we have with regard to various news organizations and their willingness to set up these circumstances whereby what they do is they make it impossible for you to bring up their websites without seeing the video that goes with it. Let's go back to the beginning of this. This is the President of the United States pledging $100 million of aid to the Palestinians. Here we go.
Today I asked the Israeli cabinet, who I met with for some time this morning, to agree to the delivery of life-saving humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza, based on the understanding that there will be inspections and that the aid should go to civilians, not to Hamas. Israel agreed the humanitarian assistance can begin to move from Egypt to Gaza. But let me be clear, if Hamas diverts or steals the assistance, they will have demonstrated once again that they have no concern for the welfare of the Palestinian people. We're working in close cooperation with the government of Egypt, the United Nations, and its agencies like the World Food Program and other partners in the region to get trucks moving across the border as soon as possible. Separately, I ask Israel that the global community demand that the International Red Cross be able to visit hostages. Today, I'm also announcing $100 million in new U.S. funding for humanitarian assistance in both Gaza and the West Bank. This money will support more than 1 million displaced and conflict-affected Palestinians, including emergency needs in Gaza. I'm here to tell you that terrorists will not win. Freedom will win. So let me end where I began. Israel, you're not alone. The United States stands with you.
That is the President of the United States working with Israeli officials to do a couple of different things. First, to demand that the Red Cross be allowed to visit the hostages in custody of Hamas. Now, this is where Hamas plays both ends against the middle. On one hand, they are not a nation. If they were a nation, that visit by the Red Cross would be illegal for that country to deny or refuse that kind of visits, those kind of visits. The Red Cross gets access to hostages being held, and prisoners too, by the way. So that's thing number one. But since Hamas is not a nation, since Hamas is essentially an ideology, they can pick and choose which parts of international law they want to follow or take advantage of. So that's thing number one. Thing number two, President Biden is standing with Israel unequivocally. He's made great statements to that effect, by the way. He's handled this pretty well. But the thing about it is he then pays the Palestinians $100 million. Now, the case of all of this is that Palestinians came out of Gaza to kill Israelis and did so. Hamas needs to be eradicated. That means Israel needs to go into the Gaza Strip and handle its business with regards to Hamas. The president showing up in Israel slowed that down. This humanitarian aid slows that down. This demand for Red Cross interaction with the hostages slows that down. In other words, the international community is fighting a delaying action for Israel to move into the Gaza Strip. This also being delayed by threats from Iran saying, hey, if you go into the Gaza Strip, we'll attack you. And that's something you got to keep in mind. But it doesn't solve the problem. And once again, we're watching the world take steps to perpetuate terror attacks against Israel. Back with more in just a moment.
nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost. How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. There have been all kinds of reactions, especially here in the United States, to the war between Israel and Hamas. And a lot of these things are inexcusable. They're simply not grounded in reality. You know, the hospital parking lot rocket explosion, which was originally a hit on a hospital that killed 500, that turned into perhaps injuring a handful of people because the rocket hit in a parking lot after pro-Palestinian terrorists fired it from a cemetery behind the hospital. All of that has been completely ignored by people like Rashida Tlaib and various members of the pro-Palestinian lobby here in the United States. And so this was something else that happened yesterday. A whole bunch of Palestinian supporters went to the Capitol building and took over the Capitol Rotunda.
News, Capitol police officers say roughly 300 people have just been arrested during these demonstrations at the U.S. Capitol. This footage coming into CBS News moments ago. Our CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian is there and can help us understand, Nicole, what type of situation has been unfolding there at the Capitol and how do things seem now?
Yeah, well, just to be clear and to put this in perspective, this is something that is occurring in the Cannon House building, which is a little bit away from where we are. We are still here in the Capitol, but the Cannon building is one of several House office buildings that members use. We do understand a short time ago that has been closed down to visitors. And this group is a group of Jewish activists in support of Palestine, as you can hear them chanting and seeing their signs calling for a ceasefire. Of course, this comes at a moment of really high tensions in the region, particularly after that strike on a hospital in Gaza just yesterday. This was a demonstration that started on the National Mall and eventually made its way here to the Capitol with, as you can see, dozens, if not hundreds, of demonstrators who made it inside the rotunda of the Cannon office building. At this point, we understand there have been about 300 arrests, according to a law enforcement official, but this, of course, is still a developing situation.
And so there were people in the Capitol building slowing things down and getting in the way. Yeah. Okay. And all right. So that was one of the things that we dealt with. Let's see what else. Anti-Semitism on campus. This is also equally absurd. I have no idea why it is that American universities have turned themselves into incubators for totalitarian terrorist activity, but they certainly have. Check this out.
A so-called Day of Resistance on campuses across the country, called by National Students for Justice in Palestine, which hails the Hamas terror attacks as a historic win for the Palestinian resistance across land, air, and sea.
That's the justification of the murder of Jews, as we've seen throughout history under a different name.
At San Diego State, one pro-Palestinian protester said this.
We're not for any lives lost, no matter what, Palestinian or Israeli.
We found that 57% of Jewish students in the U.S. have experienced or seen anti-Semitism. That was before this occurred. Now we're seeing the levels rise, the incidents rise, the complaints rise.
At Harvard, a statement released within hours of the attacks begins, "We, the undersigned student organizations, hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all unfolding violence." Some have recanted after a backlash that included a billionaire hedge fund boss asking Harvard to name members of the groups that signed, so none of us inadvertently hire them. Last night, their names and faces emblazoned on a truck in Harvard Square by a conservative organization. Such intimidation is counterproductive, said Harvard Hillel, a Jewish student group.
The conversation about what is and isn't productive discourse is something that we're seeing really taking shape.
A major UPenn benefactor has called on other alums to close the checkbooks after what he said was college leaders' apparent failure to condemn the views of some speakers at a recent Palestinian literary festival on campus. Even after the Hamas attacks, college officials have condemned anti-Semitism. In Los Angeles Tuesday, a pro-Israel rally just a stone's throw from the UCLA campus. The Cultural Affairs Commission of UCLA, a student group, posted Monday, "We honor the Palestinians on the front lines, taking their land and sovereignty back." They say this is not anti-Semitism. Judaism is separate from the political movement of Zionism.
These are UCLA organizations, and they have the permission to say these things. It's absolutely absurd.
I mean, you're holding an Israeli flag. Is that something you'd be okay doing on campus?
Oftentimes on campus, I feel scared to hold a flag if I'm not with a big group. There's a lot of anti-Semitism on campus, and it's always felt at all times.
And so, what have we got here? I'm glad you asked that question. What we have is this. There's a perfect example of what the United States Academy, the colleges and universities, are doing on their campuses with our children. That example is Ilhan Omar. She was a Somali girl that was rescued from that country, which is a terrorist country, brought to the United States at age 9. She showed up in a Minnesota enclave of Arabians and set about her life. She was given a living. She was given an education by the United States. And she went to these universities or universities like these and turned herself into a Marxist, anti-American, terror-supporting Jewish bigot. Anti-Jewish bigot. And that's all because of what happened to her after age 9. Now, there's probably some information that came her way via the neighborhood she was raised in while she was going through elementary school and junior high school and high school and then college. And that's probably significant. But there is no doubt about the fact that the American Academy is anti-capitalist. They believe in the crazy absurdity, anti-human ideologies of Marxism, which always is at odds with reality because Marxism doesn't allow for human nature. Capitalism does. This nation is proof. But that we have students all over the nation that are propelling themselves into anti-Jewish bigotry and then absolutely stunned for whatever reason that, gosh, these major Fortune 500 companies don't want to have anything to do with them. They think that that's somehow an attack on their free speech. It's not an attack on their speech. It's an attack on their actions. How did they get into a university without knowing that the Holocaust, the extermination of 6 million Jews by Nazi Germany, was real? How did they do that? Well, chances are very likely that they actually did show up on campus and actually did indeed know that the Holocaust was real until they kept hearing from their professors over and over and over again that it was not the case. And then what ended up happening is that they started believing. And now they're saying, well, gosh, the Jews are terrible. Well, the Jews aren't terrible. This is a former Palestinian leader. He's now a Christian. This is a report from earlier today.
First of all, we need to encourage civilians to go into Egypt, possibly women and children, maybe men over 50 years old. These need to get out of the picture. Then the strip need to be cut 2 pieces, north and south, 2 parts. The northern part, this is where most of the tunnels are. we need to have a solid siege, okay, for long enough to deplete the enemy and to starve them. After that, we may need to explore using gas. This is sounds horrible, but I don't see any other option. The tunnels are interconnected, and gas could be one of the solutions, but this has to be in the right time. We cannot just rush into Gaza. There is no modern army that is prepared for this type of war. And most importantly, we need to get the civilians out of the picture. As long as there are civilians there, then the operation might be incomplete.
But Mossab, you also say it's almost impossible for us to give aid to the Gaza Strip. $100 million we're about to give them and keep it away from Hamas. Don't you agree that that can't work?
Look, after we destroy the tunnels, we need to finish Hamas rule in Gaza Strip. This is priority number one. Then we need to replace the regime. Could be the Palestinian Authority, could be the Egyptian government, could be Arab League force. We need to replace their rule in Gaza. After that, we can talk about aid. But as of now, sending any aid is a mistake.
So you also believe that this isn't about the Palestinians fighting for their rights and their sovereignty. What is the real mission of Hamas, and what do they really think of the Palestinian people?
Hamas is not a national movement. Hamas is a religious movement with a goal to establish an Islamic state. They don't care for nationalism. Actually, they are against nationalism. With that said, my understanding that they are using the Palestinian cause only to achieve their goals, so the long-term goal, transforming the Middle East and the world into an Islamic state. This is Hamas agendas, and they are not hidden, by the way. So Hamas is serving foreign agendas. We're talking about Iran, and we're talking about Russia lately. Hamas serve those parties, and Iran pays them close to $1 billion annually. Iran is the real master in this picture.
It is. And he's right. This is the son of a former Hamas leader. He is now Christian. And he is saying the same things that I've been saying, that indeed bringing aid into the Gaza Strip is a mistake. Absolutely a mistake. Because what it does is it slows down the actual solution. He doesn't need, by the way, to put gas into the tunnels. All you got to do is use water. Actually, if you use tear gas in those tunnels, that's much safer than water, because a lot of those tunnels would have air pockets in them that were inescapable. And so that's what Egypt did with the tunnels coming out of the Gaza Strip into their country. They just filled them with water, and that was that. So it's not necessarily, as draconian as you might think. And he is trying to solve the problem as opposed to continuing to perpetuate it. The President of the United States slowed down a land invasion into Gaza. That land invasion into Gaza was first stopped, by the way, by severe weather. At least that's the story. I've never seen an army certainly as competent as the Israeli army being stopped by a thunderstorm, but let's just presume that that was the case since it came out of official Israeli sources. So when you slow down what is the absolute necessity, which is to go into the Gaza Strip and find these terrorists and eradicate them, you are perpetuating this entire mess. And that guy knows it. Now, I would suggest the following, and I never ever thought I'd ever be saying anything like this. You've got to find just exactly what Mahmoud Abbas wants to do and what the Palestinian Authority, what the PLO wants to do. You have to find out what their actual motivations are. So what you do is you find out, okay, President Abbas, do you indeed want to have a Palestinian homeland, yes or no? And if he equivocates, the answer is no. And so you move ahead with the security of Israel, which means you move ahead with removing any kind of terrorist activity, whether it's in the West Bank or whether it's in the Gaza Strip. You just remove it whenever you find it, and you keep doing that. And people will say, my God, that's an occupation. Yeah, well, that's what it takes. It's either that or wake up one morning to find out that some of the people living close to the Gaza Strip had been attacked by terrorists and disemboweled while they were sleeping. This is what we have to do. These people have reduced this down to the draconian solution, and that's a mistake. But that's what happens when you don't negotiate in good faith. If Mahmoud Abbas is finally ready to have a homeland for the Palestinians, then this is his chance. In which case he could go into the Gaza Strip, take control there, and start moving forward. This is the Wells Report. Think that over and let me know what you think.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
This is the Wells Report. John David Wells at your service. Thanks for being a part of our broadcast. There is news from the chase for the Speaker of the House of Representatives. This from 32 minutes ago while we were discussing the mess in the Middle East. House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan has canceled the third vote to elect a Speaker of the House of Representatives and will back a move to empower House Speaker pro tempore Patrick McHenry until January, according to Fox News Digital. Jim Jordan lost support to become Speaker, could afford few Republican defections. Fox News was told he was expected to lose further votes in a ballot today. Jordan's team said they intended to keep going with a third vote, with supporters optimistic he could gain support. However, there had been other potential candidates emerging from the wings amid the stalemate. As a matter of fact, potential challengers waiting in the wings for Jim Jordan to step aside include Representative Jack Bergman from Michigan. He's a retired Marine Corps colonel. He was prepared to step into the race if Jordan faltered, which appears to be the case. Following the second round of voting, the general was approached by colleagues and has had conversations about a possible speaker run. We cannot go another day without a speaker. He simply doesn't have the votes. We need to have a frank discussion as a conference about a path forward. If as a conference we see he can't get the necessary votes, General Bergman is prepared to step up. Bergman is seeking to cast himself as a stable force to lead the House until the new term begins in 2025. Let me explain how this looks to me. I could be wrong. First of all, thing number one, it's conduct like this that made me fire the Republican Party. And it has to do with the moderate Republican Party versus the conservative Republican Party. And for the sake of this discussion, I'll split those two groups into those halves. The moderate Republican Party exists as an enabler of Democrat Party policy. They have always been this way. They will always be that way. It is this wish to avoid any kind of real adversarial interactions with the Democrat Party, which is foolish. It's actually not the way it's supposed to be. In fact, that idea of enabling the other party circumvents the entire idea of a two-party system. It's really a triangle. You have the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and all of the founding documents of the United States of America at the top of a pyramid. On the left corner of the triangle, that would be people who believe in a liberal use of government, et cetera, to essentially use government to solve all problems. On the right side of that particular triangle, that pyramid, if you will, is a conservative movement that believes the people of the United States rule themselves and that really, in most cases, don't need the government to interfere with their lives. And with the Constitution of both sides as the guiding principle of their politics, then they fight to create a balance of government interaction in somebody's lives or no government interactions in somebody's lives. So in regular human beings' lives, United States citizens. And that little poise moves left and right based on the needs and functions of the day and the politics that are being discussed and the people's response to those politics. But if, say, for example, they decide to meet in the middle, there's no longer a triangle. As a matter of fact, it's a straight line. It becomes a monolith. And that monolith is of political power for no reason aside from political power, leaving the people out of the discussion. Now, the mainstream Republicans, the moderate Republicans, cloaking themselves in conservatism but not actually following the precepts of it, were infuriated when Kevin McCarthy was removed as Speaker after refusing to release the January 6th tapes, after demanding all of the information from the January 6th committee and their so-called investigation into what happened on January 6th. That committee destroyed that information, or purportedly destroyed that information. Something tells me they didn't actually do it, because that would be illegal. And you can't very well chase down a former president of the United States for mishandling government papers if you mishandle government papers. Expect that to come up in the Trump trials moving forward. But that being said, Republicans, the non-conservative Republicans, the moderates, have had a hold on this party for long enough so that President Trump was able to completely expose the vast majority of people who don't want the government in their face, and thus voted for Donald Trump for president in 2016. I said at the time, well, the people of the United States fired the Republican Party and everybody in politics because Donald Trump set aside everyone. Democrat candidates, Republican candidates, he became the president. And the swamp became a sabotaging lynch mob trying to get rid of him. And so, what we have now is we have McHenry. Great. He's a Republican moderate. We have people that are Republican moderates essentially blowing off the conservative wing of the Republican Party. As a member of a conservative party, not the conservative wing of the Republican Party, I say great. Let's leave the party. The executive producer of The Wells Report is Dirk Steele. Our associate producer and publicist is Jube Dankworth. Find her at netmediaconsultants.com. I'm John David Wells. Thanks for watching The Wells Report. Okie dokie. Before you guys go, especially on the chat room, I am talking to the people on the chat room, okay? I decided to block Chris Grimes from this chat room. And it had to do with circumstances regarding my editorial policy on this broadcast regarding stories, and his willingness to crap on me for whatever reason, just reducing his entire interaction with this broadcast to criticizing me and my editorial policies and what I do. That's perfectly fine. I don't have any problem with him doing that, except that I'm not interested in him evangelizing for something that he believes that we get wrong based on the fact he has no idea what we're trying to accomplish here. All he's trying to do is just he's just trying to lob in pot shots. And I will be honest with you, Chris was also somebody that spent an awful lot of time giving us real good information and double checking the broadcast. And that's not a problem. But when it became mean, like for example, this morning he said, oh, the reason that you don't have a radio career anymore and WBAP passed on you was because of the fact that I don't tell the truth. Well, I let him go. So it has nothing to do when somebody's interaction on the chat room becomes me. That's not what we do here. This is not the Alex Jones broadcast. This is not a personality cult. This is, as Brad says, this is about the news. And that's what we do. Okay? So the reason I'm explaining this, John, and thank you very much for bringing that up. The reason I'm explaining this is because I do want people to interact. I do want people to disagree. I just don't want people to be detractors and try to derail the show and do whatever it is they do. It's not Bad Hawaiian Shirt Friday, Brad. It's Fishing Shirt Friday. Get a fishing shirt. Because I'm sure you have bad Hawaiian shirts, but let's move on. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that you understood that, I warned Chris many, many times and couldn't get him to go with me on it, so I let him go today. And it's sad because I really appreciated his interaction right up to the point where it became all about me, and that this entire broadcast is not about me. I don't do the John David Wells show. I do the Wells Report. It's news. That's what it is. It's not about me. And the reason, by the way, that he was all incensed is because I didn't tell you my sources for the fact that there were indeed circumstances where American weapons came to Hamas. Now, I have information that has happened. Yes, there were stories out there that said it was because of Ukrainian corruption, but I wasn't ready to say so. As it turns out, it looks like it's a Russian disinformation exercise. In other words, captured weapons given to Ukrainians, captured by Russia, were then transferred to Hamas, with Russia saying that Ukraine was responsible. I didn't report that story because I didn't have enough information. That information, by the way, came during the show today. So So not ready to report the story. Will I talk about it? Yes. I said there were reports out there that, as opposed to, this is what happened. And that narrow difference is something that Chris can't figure out and used it as a lever to pound me in the face. Well, okay. By all means, go with God, Chris. Good luck. Have a great time. Thank you very much. But please don't deal with us here on the Wells Report if you don't get it or if you don't want to get it. So there you go. All right. Conservative radio is dying. Streaming is the new media. He is a Luddite. He's a Luddite. Ignore him. Thank you, Cleo. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Okay, that's all I have. I just wanted to let you know I'm very ill at ease at blocking somebody from our chat rooms. But I just did everything I could. Tried to stop him. Couldn't get there. No, I'm not CNN. I'm not MSNBC. I'm not ABC News. I report what's real. I report the facts. I tell you what I think about him, but I make sure that you know that that's not news. And that's all that is. You know, and I'm sad. I'm sad that Chris is gone. But on the other hand, you know, I've got work to do. I don't need somebody inside the show telling people how shitty the show is. It's just not necessary. I mean, you know, if you don't like it, leave. That's fine. That's okay. But I do, in good faith, report the news truthfully every single day. And I will not stop. I will not stop. That's all I have. So God bless all y'all. Take good care. Thanks very much again for being a part of the broadcast, and I will see you again tomorrow for Fishing Shirt Friday. Make sure you're wearing your fishing shirt. Bye-bye.